My name is Harris, and this is my simple story about a marriage in crisis. I thought our marriage was good. Jill and I were married for almost 25 years. Our daughter Stephanie was in her senior year of college, and we were happy and proud that she had already found a job after graduation. She studied accounting, excelled, and began her career in the Washington, D.C. area. We lived in Richmond, and it was only a couple of hours away. Given the traffic, it could take anywhere from 1.5 to 3.5 hours. Jill and I have been together since our senior year of college. We met, started dating, and fell in love. This was nothing unusual, but I always felt that we were kindred spirits. At least that's what I thought. I am a person of average build, rather thin, about 178 centimeters tall, and weighing about 77 kilograms. To me, Jill was a real beauty. She had luxurious curly red hair and a slender, well-proportioned figure. Her height was about 165 centimeters, and her eyes were incredibly beautiful green. She was very sweet and a little shy. She told me that she hardly went on dates because she wanted to do well in school and believed that parties and alcohol would only hinder her. I was more of a party animal, not overly so, but I thoroughly enjoyed my college years. I was also more outgoing, but Jill and I complemented each other perfectly. I had two girlfriends before Jill, one in high school and one in college. Everyone who knew Jill said that she was very kind and sweet, and this was indeed the case. However, like a true Irish woman, if she considered herself right, she could show character. I have faced her outbursts of anger more than once, and more often than not I gave in if she firmly stood her ground. Over the years, we both developed our own daily habits. I worked in retail, a department store, and she worked in the city's building and codes department. She was a very responsible employee and worked there for over 20 years. She got a job straight out of college, but then left her career for 5 years to care for our daughter. Then she returned to work. Working with the city administration was challenging, but overall she enjoyed it. My career also took off since I started working right after my studies. We returned to our hometown and were happy about it. I received offers to move to other places, but Jill did not want to leave because her mother lived nearby and needed support as she grew older. My parents were no longer alive. Their loss was a huge blow to me. They both died of cancer, and it happened too quickly. It was a huge blow to me, but Jill, our daughter, and her mother supported me. Jill also loved my parents very much, so their departure was painful for her too. I think when many years pass in a marriage, spouses begin to take each other for granted. This probably happened to us too. Now that our daughter was finishing her studies and was about to move out for good, I decided it was time to rekindle our relationship as we had in the early years of marriage. I started setting up weekly dinners and date nights for Jill. Our intimate life became insipid, and it seemed to me that such evenings would help bring back the passion. I have read many stories about adultery and the signs that something is wrong, but I never had the slightest suspicion that Jill would jeopardize our marriage. We have always lived correctly because we ourselves understood it. I never limited her freedom. She always did as she saw fit. I paid all the bills, and she took care of the house and cooking. We were a great team. If one of us wanted to buy something, we always discussed it, especially if we were talking about large purchases. Like everyone who works in retail, I spent an insane amount of hours at work in the lead up to Christmas. I was an assistant store manager, and 60-hour work weeks were common during this period. Jill, on the other hand, could afford to work less at the end of the year because she took time off in advance. In addition, her department held a Christmas corporate party every year, where spouses were also invited. Despite the workload, I always tried to go to her holiday to get to know my colleagues. In the fall, I began to notice that Jill was becoming a little distant. Not anything drastic, but she's definitely changed. As someone who had been married for so many years, I didn't think much of it. However, she showed less and less interest in intimacy. She didn't want to go to our weekly date, and when she did, she seemed indifferent to the movie or dinner. Our intimate life has decreased from 1-2 times a week to 1-2 times a month. It happened gradually, and although I still enjoyed our time together, she seemed to lose interest in it. She said that the reason was a hormonal pause and fatigue from work, but something told me that it was not only that. Sometimes I had to go on business trips to the head office. In October, I was going on a trip for a week. Jill used to always hate it when I left and didn't like being alone. This time, however, she simply said, "Okay." This alarmed me. Her distance, her reluctance to spend time with me. I repeatedly asked if she was okay. She just nodded and said that she was tired at work. I suggested she go to the doctor. She replied that she would go. When I was getting ready to go on a trip, she wished me to have a good time and behave myself. I laughed and said that this was a joke after all. We were there. There were only long and boring meetings to look forward to. Basically, it felt more like studying than something fun. I thought it was strange that she asked me to behave myself, since I had never given her any reason to think that I could act differently. The more I thought about her words and actions, the more I realized that something was clearly wrong. I asked her if everything was okay, and she said yes. I said that I would miss her, and she replied that I would only be gone for 5 days. She always hated sleeping alone. My God, what if she wasn't planning on sleeping alone? I watched her closely over the weekend. My flight was on Sunday afternoon, and I was due back on Friday for dinner. I called a few of her friends and asked if Jill had told them about any problems. Her closest friend Beth said she looked tired, but didn't say anything more. I also knew Sally, one of her colleagues. I asked Sally if anything had changed at Jill's work. Sally was silent for a minute, and I repeated my question. Then Sally said, "We have a new manager in the department. He introduced new rules, and now everyone has more work." I thought it was strange that Jill didn't tell me about it. I asked when this new manager arrived and what his name was. Sally hesitated and answered, "He's only been working with us for a couple of months." But she didn't mention his name, so I asked again. Sally said, "I don't want to interfere in this." I was stunned. "Sally, please tell me what's going on. I'm very worried about Jill." After a short pause, Sally reluctantly said, "His name is Robert Haverford. He is a large man and quite intimidating." "Sally, please, should I be worried about this person? How old is he?" "He is about 35. He is handsome, about 190 centimeters tall, weighs more than 90 kilograms. I played football in college." Now I was seriously worried. "Sally, tell me honestly, how does he feel about Jill?" Sally answered quietly, "He seems to like her. They have lunch together at least once a week, but I haven't seen anything more than that." I didn't like this information, but I thanked Sally. "Sally, one more thing. I know Jill is your friend, but if you notice anything strange in her behavior, please tell me. I won't tell anyone that this is from you." Sally promised to try, but it didn't sound very convincing. Now I was completely immersed in anxiety. Should I talk to Jill right away or find out more first? I was leaving in 2 days and needed to clarify the situation. I started collecting information about Robert. I found official information about him published in connection with his appointment. He came from Charlotte, was unmarried, and had 2 sons. Then I found out where he lives. His house was about 8 kilometers from us, in a good area similar to ours. I tried to remember if anyone I knew lived there who could look after him. On Saturday, I continued my investigation. I couldn't get Sally's words about him being cute and scary out of my head. This worried me. Jill, who had always been more of a follower, could have simply followed this handsome man into his bed. Although I never had any reason to suspect Jill of infidelity, her recent actions have made me wary. I called our daughter and asked if she had noticed any changes in her mother's behavior. Stephanie replied that Mom was a little distracted, but nothing strange. I asked her to call Jill and ask her about the job in a discreet way without arousing suspicion. I said I was just worried about her work situation without mentioning anything about the boss. Stephanie promised to call back after the conversation. I busied myself with housework, keeping my phone with me. Jill came out and said she was going shopping. I asked with whom, and she replied that she was alone and would be back soon. As soon as she left, I tried to access her computer. At that moment, Stephanie called. She asked her mother directly if she had problems at work. Jill replied that there were some difficulties, but they would soon be resolved, and did not explain anything else. Stephanie also asked if any of her colleagues were dealing with these issues. Jill said that the issue is already being resolved. It didn't give me much clarity, but I knew I had to learn more. I continued trying to log into her computer, but she changed all the settings, and I was unable to gain access. She also deleted all old sent emails and cleared out the deleted messages folder. I would check her phone, but she literally wouldn't leave it. As I was getting ready for the trip, I suddenly thought, what if I went to Haverford's house and saw if Jill had gone there? She was dressed normally, as if she were going shopping, but that didn't mean anything. I got to his house in 15 minutes. I just wanted to drive by, see what kind of car he had, and write down the license plate number. When I turned onto his street, there was a car parked in his driveway. I didn't know what he was driving, but I saw that the car had North Carolina license plates, and he came from Charlotte. Lexus. The city seems to pay department heads well. Jill worked as an executive assistant, and her salary was quite reasonable. I earned a little more, but not significantly. Not seeing anything suspicious, I turned around and went home. When I arrived, a neighbor called out to me. Tom Johnston, captain of the area surveillance team, told me the latest news. When I was about to go into the house, I told him that I was leaving for a week and asked him to look after us. Jill will be left at home alone, and I would like it if he checked on her from time to time to make sure she was okay. He said he would do so, and I entered the house. Once I was inside, I started the laundry to wash items I might need for the trip. I usually wash my underwear along with Jill's clothes to fill the machine. I started rummaging through the laundry basket and came across some sexy new bras and panties that I had never seen before. Once again, everything began to add up to a picture of serious problems in our marriage. Like most men, it's happened to me. I see something new on my wife, and she laughs and says that she's been wearing it for a year, but I just didn't notice. But here I was sure I had never seen it. Jill knows I like black and red lingerie. I've given it to her before, but she almost never wears it. Now I see both and wonder when she suddenly decided to wear them. About that moment, I heard the front door open, and she entered the house and went upstairs. I asked if the shopping went well, and she replied that she didn't find much, but there was a sale at the mall. I work at a department store and have a discount for employees and their spouses, which she usually enjoys using. But this time she said she decided to try new stores. I just shook my head. The conversation didn't go well at dinner. I was thinking about the situation, and it seemed like she was too. It was as if we were on opposite sides of the barricades. Jill was always an excellent cook and prepared delicious meals. But lately she has been increasingly buying semi-finished products. Sometimes that was fine, especially when we were both busy, but right now she had nothing to do. I told her that I needed to go to the store to get some allergy medicine. I suffer from it in the fall and spring. He asked if she needed anything. She gave me a short list: paper towels, toilet paper, and a few other things. I said I'll be back soon. Smiling, I said goodbye to her, that I would like to spend the evening with her, because I would soon have to leave. Her answer was predictable. She was going to go to bed early because she was tired and didn't sleep well the night before. So there was no question of romance or even a simple hug. I was amazed and disappointed. My wife became just a housemate for me. What the hell is going on? When I returned from the store and started putting away my purchases, she was unhappy with literally everything. Wrong toilet paper, wrong towels, etc. I understood what was going on. She tried to provoke a quarrel to avoid any intimacy. I was stunned. When did my loving wife turn into a bitch? She deliberately tried to start a scandal to justify her actions in my absence. I just shook my head. As expected, she came upstairs shortly after dinner and read a book while I showered. As I changed into my pajamas, she said she was very tired and would go to bed soon. It was 8:30. I just went downstairs and watched the football match. That night, I slept on the couch. It seemed stupid to go to bed with a wife who does nothing but get angry and provoke conflicts so as not to interact with me in any way. Early Sunday morning, I got up, made coffee, and was reading the newspaper when she came downstairs. Sometimes we went to church, but with her mood, I didn't know if she wanted to go there. She quickly got dressed and said that we needed to hurry if we wanted to make it in time. I got ready too, and in a few minutes we were ready. At church, she acted like my old wife, sweet, friendly with everyone. I was hoping that the priest would say something about fidelity, but alas, not this time. After the service, we greeted our friends and went home. On the way, she simply ignored me. When we arrived at the house, she immediately got out of the car, and I decided to roll up the trash cans for Monday collection. She screamed at me to quickly open the door because she forgot her keys. I opened it for her and finished with the trash cans. When I entered the house, I saw that she was making herself a sandwich. She usually asked if I wanted anything or cooked for two at once. I changed into jeans and a sweatshirt, and then I also made myself a sandwich and sat down to eat in front of the TV. When I glanced at Jill, she was reading the newspaper. Then her phone rang, and she picked it up and left the room. This woman knew how to be different. She hasn't said a word to me since we got back. After lunch, I took out all our washed clothes, folded them, and took them upstairs to the bedroom. I neatly folded her underwear and left it on the bed so that she would know for sure that I had seen it. When she walked into the room, her only comment was, "I hope you wash this on a gentle cycle, otherwise you might ruin all my clothes with your incompetence." I turned around and was on the verge of an explosion. I was angry and was about to tell this witch what she could do with her new panties and bras, but she left the room. I collected my things and was about to leave. Jill saw me place my suitcase and carry on luggage by the door. She complained that now she would have to take me to the airport and sacrifice her Sunday afternoon. Usually, she was happy to take me around, and we talked about how much we would miss each other. This time I knew I could never be happy with this woman again. I told her, "Don't worry, I'll go myself and have a wonderful week." I was sure she already had her plans and couldn't wait for me to leave. I got into the car and left the house without saying goodbye or kissing as usual. The trip to Chicago was uneventful, and I checked into my hotel room. I was the only representative for my store, and this provided an opportunity to meet other people and discuss business. As much as I hated traveling, meeting new people was rewarding and encouraging as we exchanged ideas. Usually, I would call my wife to let her know I had arrived safely, but this time I didn't call. What was the point? After all, she was no longer mine. I called my daughter and told her that I would be away for a few days and that she could contact me on my cell phone if she needed anything. I never heard a word from Jill. I was absolutely sure that it was good for her that she got rid of me. We had a wonderful dinner, and I met people from all over the country. I was tired and needed a good night's sleep, having barely slept the last few nights. In the middle of the night, I woke up and burst into tears. I had been holding back all my emotions and finally let them come out. I was so glad to be alone because I knew my marriage was over unless Jill decided I still meant something to her. I couldn't live like this anymore. I cried because my daughter spent the holidays with one parent or the other. I cried for all the years we spent together. Basically, they were very happy. Then I went back to sleep and woke up to start a week of meetings. I checked my cell phone, no messages or texts from Jill. Nothing. It was a real blow to the gut, absolutely no news from my supposedly loving wife. The week of meetings passed, and gradually I began to make a plan on how to get out of this marriage. It was obvious that she was gone, and I could never get her back. I called my lawyer and told him about my situation. He said he could prepare the documents if I wanted. After a long conversation, he suggested that the division of property would be about 50-50ths. I made a little more than her, and our daughter's college expenses were already covered, since she was almost out of high school. I was a little reassured by the beginning of the procedure that was supposed to break this marriage fiction. Surprisingly, all this happened within a few weeks. That being said, I still had no proof that she was cheating physically, not yet, but she was clearly cheating emotionally, cutting me off from her life. Then I checked all our accounts. I paid a lot of things online, and my wife didn't even care about our bills. Usually she didn't care. She didn't know we had retirement accounts and only paid for what she wanted to buy. Now at least I felt like I was getting my life back. As the week went by, I decided to call my neighbor Tom to see if he had noticed anything suspicious in the area. He said that every morning someone picks up my wife by car and drops her off again in the evening. I asked what car it was, and he said Lexus. I laughed and thanked him for the information. Tom, always a little curious, was now glad that his intervention had been useful. I asked him to do one big favor: keep track of how long this car sits in my yard. I was extremely straightforward and told him about my suspicions. He happily agreed because he himself had experienced a not-so-pleasant divorce story several years ago. On Thursday, I called my boss in Richmond and asked to leave early, citing problems at home. He agreed, since the main meeting on Friday was already just a wrap-up week. I boarded an early evening flight home and called Tom again. He said that the car had been parked all night, and he even had a couple of photographs with timestamps. I said that I owed him, and he replied that there was no need for gratitude. I also said that I would come see him later to see what was going on. He, being retired, will probably be there if anything happens. I thanked him and said that I would first park on the street, look at him, and then go home. When I boarded the plane, I was deeply worried about what would happen when I returned. I knew the marriage was over, but I was still shocked by Jill's behavior. How could a loving wife turn into a completely uncaring, selfish bitch in a matter of weeks? Finally, I got off the plane, found my car, and checked my phone, again seeing no news from Jill. My daughter called, and I called her back. She said she tried to call her mother, but she did not answer either her cell phone or her home phone. She even left a message asking to call back. I drove up to my house and slowly walked down the street. There were no cars in front of the house. It was about 8 o'clock in the evening, and I thought that maybe Jill's car was in the garage. But since the garage only fits one car, at least Haverford, the bastard, wasn't there. I went to the neighbors, and Tom opened the door and invited me into the house. He said the car had been there all night, parked on the street, right in front of the house. So they tried to be invisible, but it didn't work out very well. He added that he saw them leave about 6, and since then, as far as he knew, there had been no more of them. I wondered if they were visiting him or maybe just going to dinner. I decided it might be worth a trip to Haverford's house. Tom suggested that I move my car to the next street so that if they returned, they would not notice that my car was parked nearby. I agreed. He suggested that I could go to his house, but that they would return because if they were spending the night at his place, Jill would probably take some clothes with her. Tom remarked, "They looked like a happy couple as they held hands as they got into the car." He apologized after his words, and I told him not to worry because my marriage was already over. Now all I had to do was wait. I called my lawyer and told him I was back in town. He said that the documents are already ready. The division of the property was fairly equal, with everyone keeping their own retirement plans and the house being divided equally when it was sold. We would both receive a share of the value accumulated in it. We had been together for almost 18 years, and it was estimated that we would each get about $100,000 after the sale unless she argued. I said I would be amazed if she argued unless she wanted a better deal. The lawyer said he could have everything ready by Monday morning. I still had a lot to do, but I couldn't keep it to myself until Monday. I needed to go to the bank and allocate funds, as well as sort out joint accounts and credit cards. There weren't many bills, but for the sake of fairness, after 24 years together, it was necessary. The hardest part was calling Stephanie and telling her. I decided to wait until I met them in person and found out what was going on. While I was waiting, Tom noticed how nervous I was and told me to sit down, relax, and he would bring coffee. He talked about his time in the Army and how waiting was an important part of discipline. I appreciated his words, and it calmed me down. We sat in Tom's living room, overlooking my house across the street. It was dark, and when we saw a car approaching the house, he went out to look. He said, "Sit down and wait until they come back, and we'll see what they do." Finally, around 8:30, the car pulled up to the house. Jill stepped out, and a large man followed her, putting his arm around her as they walked towards the door. Tom had a great camera and took some pictures as they entered the house. He then turned to me and asked what I wanted to do: go up and see them in person or wait until he left so I could meet Jill myself. Since the next day was Friday and they had to go to work, I decided to wait a few minutes and then quietly sneak into the house. Tom suggested calling a lawyer and getting his opinion. I called and said that I was going to enter the house where my wife and her lover were. He suggested that it might be worth waiting until the private investigator arrived to avoid provoking possible violence or anger. I said it was too long to wait. I needed to see them with my own eyes. He said the man could react and things could escalate into a major conflict. I replied that I didn't care, I had to see it. I turned to Tom and said that I would come in a few minutes to capture them in a compromising situation, not just talking, but making love. Tom said he would go with me, and I said I could handle it myself. He said, "Wait a minute," and left the room. After some time, he returned with a pistol. He explained that he took it for self-defense. "At least I'll be standing outside the house if anything happens, so I can record it with my camera and phone," he said. I thanked him, and we headed towards the house together. It was about 9 p.m. I watched as I looked into the living room in the dark upper bedroom and saw them kissing passionately. It took all my strength not to scream at them, at Jill and her lover. My heart was breaking, but I continued to watch, because if they continued to make love in the living room, passers-by might notice them through the slightly open curtains. Tom walked over and took a couple of pictures with his camera. Jill had a strange smile on her face, like a child at Christmas. All my hopes of saving the marriage completely disappeared when Jill stood up, and he took off her blouse and pants. She stood there in the red panties and bra that I admired on Sunday when I washed them. Then he picked her up and carried her upstairs. When I saw the light was on, I walked to the back of the house and slowly opened the back door. I walked up the stairs and stopped. I turned on the video on my phone to record their conversation and cautiously peered into the corridor. The door was slightly open and the light was on. They didn't notice that I was standing in the corridor, so I started filming. Finally, Jill turned her head and saw me. I watched as her gaze of passion turned to horror when she noticed my presence. Haverford turned around, saw me, and laughed, saying, "The weakling has arrived, now you can watch." I stood there, and slowly my blood began to boil, and I said out loud, "Screw you and screw her, and no one will come in here and disrespect me in my house, in my bedroom, and with my wife." Haverford was silent for a moment, then regained his momentum and said, "What are you going to do about it, you cuckold?" I replied, "Let me ask, how tall are you?" He said, "About 6'3", weighs about 225 pounds, and I've got something you'll never have." He then laughed. All this time, Jill was wide-eyed and dead silent. I said, "I bet you're in shape. Have you been running too?" He looked in surprise that I was having a normal conversation with him and said, "Yes, I run well and keep in shape." "So, scum, can you outrun a bullet?" I said. Jill screamed, and his impudence gave way to alarm. "Hey man, don't do anything stupid." I ordered, "Get down on the floor. Do it now, you fucking bastard, and Jill, shut up." She just sobbed and trembled. "Now that I have your attention, I want to ask you a few questions," I said, a calm confidence washing over me. "First of all, who was this psychic giant who decided to do this in my house, you or Jill? Answer me, bastard. We knew you wouldn't be there and thought we'd be more comfortable here. If you called, Jill wanted to be here too," he replied. I said, "Wow, that was brilliant. Now the next question is, how many times have you slept? Jill, do you want to answer?" I smiled at her, but she just shook her head and cried. "Well, cowboy, it looks like you have to answer." Answer correctly, otherwise it may be the last time if you lie. We, we did this 5 times, he stammered. When was the first time? Monday evening, first time. I swear it was Monday, Jill. Please tell me what I'm saying. I'm begging you. Jill froze, but nodded. Jill, is that so? Jill said, yes, it is. Harris, please, honey, I love you. I was just trying something new, and I'm so sorry. But you didn't answer my question. Did you like him more than me? Give me the answer, bitch. No, honey, but I did it because he insisted. It's over, so we can be a couple again. I laughed. I don't know what happened to me, but I felt like I was getting at least some self-respect back. He slowly got up and began to get dressed. Now let me make a statement regarding this incident. I have a short video and photo of you doing different things and saying different things. If you don't want this to become public knowledge, I will keep this intervention a secret. Do you both agree? Jill nodded and Haverford said, yes, I agree. Please don't release this video. Jill said, Harris, I'm sorry. Please don't do this. I'll do whatever it takes. Haverford was already dressed, and I ordered him to leave, adding, Robert Haverford, please don't have sex with married women anymore, okay? He nodded and left. Now I was left with my unfaithful wife, still naked and crying. I told her to get dressed, that I would make coffee, and we would talk. My good friend Tom was downstairs and said he was proud of me and listened to the whole conversation. I was surprised, but thanked him. He said he supported me because when he gave me the gun, it only had 1 bullet in it, and he was ready to intervene if necessary. He was afraid that I would kill them both and cause mayhem, so 1 bullet will most likely stop this asshole. I thanked him, and he said, even though what she did was wrong, don't hurt her, you'll go to jail, and your daughter needs you. Thank you, Tom, I said. A few minutes later, my beautiful cheater came down. I poured her coffee, and we sat down. She tried to sit next to her, but I stood up and sat in the chair, looking at her. Well, what can you say? Jill replied, I cannot express how much I regret what I did. You know, I've never behaved like that. I interrupted her. Jill, I thought I knew you. Continue. She cried and said, I was caught up in a whirlwind of new sensations and thought that you would never know. I said, I thought I knew you, but you acted so meanly. You humiliated me. Did you think that I was deaf, dumb, and blind? You know I loved you beyond measure, and my 24 years with you were wonderful thanks to you and Stephanie. And then it seemed like you became obsessed and went crazy. Here's your chance to cleanse your soul. Tell me everything. Any lie and I'll throw you out. I said this, no longer intending to take this bitch back, but simply trying to make her admit her mistakes. She cried and said that she understood. Harris, I have no excuse except that I gave in to the moment and let him have his way with me. You are so loving, caring, and gentle, and he was a savage who took everything he wanted. She paused, and I looked at her emotionless face. It sounds stupid, and I was being so stupid. I said, it was one hell of a date. We had sex 5 times, plus a lot of other cuddling, plus let's not forget about dinners. And you know that your colleagues are also aware they saw how you behaved together. She gasped, oh my God, I didn't think they'd find out. Sorry, honey, they know you're a woman of easy virtue. She cried again. I'm so sorry, both for you and for me. I was embarrassed. I cannot agree with you, but you also humiliated me. Your disrespect and narcissism were terrible. Everything was just about you. I never thought that someone who supposedly loved me would do this to me. I even shed a tear. She saw this and ran up to me. I told her, sit still and leave me alone. You left me alone for weeks and showed no concern. Didn't you realize that you didn't even call when I was gone for 5 days? You were so carried away by your lover that you forgot about the man who was with you for more than 24 years. Shame on you, Jill. I would bet everything I have on you loving me to death, in sorrow and in joy. And then I burst into tears. I held on as best I could, but now I couldn't stop. I was thinking about all the upcoming holidays, and next week was Thanksgiving. My poor Stephanie will now be forced to spend the holidays bouncing between parents. Jill ruined everything. As angry as I was at Haverford, the pain of Jill's betrayal was much greater, because her disrespect and lack of love cut me deeper. In her eyes, I turned out to be a weakling because I put her well-being above mine. I sacrificed myself for her. I looked after her when she was sick. I understood her feelings. I willingly gave up my desires for her sake. She came towards me again, and I pushed her away. She grabbed my legs and fell at my feet, sobbing. I needed to have this conversation for closure. I didn't expect any typical justifying chatter from her, as all cheaters do. You were lonely, he said you were beautiful, and so on. I didn't care what he said, I only cared about what you did. She cried again and said, Harris, I lost everything. My self-respect, your love, I'm broken. Jill, do you love him? Do you want it? What are your plans? No, I don't think so. I was just in love with the idea of something new. I said, You don't think so, which means you're not entirely sure if you love him. No, Harris, I don't like him. It was just a novelty, trying something forbidden. I found it incredible. You won't be able to change your feelings that quickly. We both need a good night's sleep. I have a day off tomorrow, and after sleep we can discuss everything. I think we better go to bed. I got up and went to our bedroom, picking up some things and taking them to my daughter's room. She said, I want to sleep with you. I replied, Our bedroom is now desecrated by Haverford and you. I doubt I'll ever be able to sleep there. You'd better stay in it. First of all, you need to do something tomorrow. Go to the doctor and get examined. Haverford probably had a lot of women while he was here, so you need to get your health checked. If you slept with him before we last made love, tell me because I might need to get tested too. Also, he convinced you to do this in our bed. He tried to humiliate me and make me a cuckold. This pisses me off. Good night. I slammed the door and went to bed. Jill went to her room. I tossed and turned in bed until I finally fell asleep and then woke up at 7 o'clock. Jill was already in the kitchen. She made coffee and said she was taking the day off. We had the whole day, and it scared me not to want to listen to her all day. She prepared breakfast, and we ate in silence. Finally, she said she would take a disease test. She also wanted to discuss this with me. I told her, Why do you need this? If you still want to see your lover and know how to be careful, you can continue. She looked at me in surprise and asked, Do you want me to continue dating him? Don't you want to? He completely captivated you and you loved it. You still have to see him every day at work. Nothing should change so you can safely afford it. She was puzzled and didn't know what to say. Why do you say that? I want to be with you. I think we should try separation after all. That way you can get what you need and I'll be a happy, unsuspecting cuckold. You'll get the best of both worlds, you'll be respected by your friends and family, and you won't have to waste time on a fake marriage. When we have to go to some events together, we can pretend to be a happy couple. Great opportunity for you. I have something to do today. I'll be gone for a while. Have a good day. She started crying when I got up to leave. Why did that stupid bitch even care what I did? Lately, she didn't care. While she was putting away the dishes, I checked her phone to see if he had called her. There haven't been any calls from him since last night, but that doesn't mean she hasn't contacted him on our landline. My first task was to talk to the boss and explain everything. He was shocked and felt sorry for Jill. He couldn't believe it. After the conversation, I wanted to transfer to another store that was offered to me, if possible. A new place, a new job, it would be an increase in salary and an opportunity to get away from the hell in which I lived. He promised to find out when this could be arranged. It may take a month or two. Then I went to a lawyer and told him my plans. We decided to have a standard separation and then file for divorce, splitting almost everything 50-50ths. I'll move out of the house within a week and see how long it takes to transfer. And then I'll start a new life. After meeting with the lawyer, I went to change all accounts and cancel all joint cards, withdrawing 50% of our savings from checking accounts. Then I had to meet with our broker about the investments and try to change them too. To do this, I needed Jill to sign the documents because she was supposed to receive half of the investment. Hell, it was pretty simple, but I felt terrible. I left, had a snack, and went for a walk in the park. I had the phone and Jill called saying she had an appointment at the doctor's office and the results would be back in a few days. I told her I'd be there soon. I needed to talk to Stephanie and let her know, but I decided to wait until we worked out some arrangements. Just the thought brought tears to my eyes. After a walk and fresh air, I headed towards the house. It was no longer a house, but just a damn apartment. When I walked in, Jill was already dressed and looking beautiful. She was very nervous and said we needed to move on and hopefully repair our marriage. Okay, dear wife, tell me, what can we do? She suggested that we go to counseling. She also promised to limit the time she spends with Robert. We will try to find time for ourselves. This seemed like a good idea to me. Her goal is to rebuild our lives and move on. I listened and pretended that what she was saying was important to me. When she finished, I said, "Are you ready to give me all your cell phone correspondence and emails for him? I want to read them to understand where we should move next." She didn't like the idea. She said she deleted them. How convenient. I asked her why she deleted them. She replied that she didn't want me to see them. Oh, I see. When did you do this? She said she wanted to start over and get rid of everything that reminded her of Robert. I think she thought it was a great idea that would make me happy. I told her that I had a document for her to review, a separation agreement drawn up by our lawyer. If she wants, she can consult with someone else. I will move out, find temporary housing, and continue to help with expenses. After separation, she will be able to decide what to do next. I watched her consider this and waited for her answer. She said she would prefer to stay together and try to work things out. She loved me and thought we could get through this. I didn't agree, and I didn't tell her that I was planning on transferring as soon as the opportunity presented itself. I knew she would never leave. We spent the rest of the day doing chores around the house. I was working in the yard, and she was talking to her mother about Thanksgiving and inviting friends over, as we always did. I wasn't going to participate this year and forgot to tell her about it. We just ordered pizza, and we sat in silence. The rest of the weekend, I started packing my things to move. She said she didn't want me to leave and asked me to wait until after the holidays to make a decision. I just nodded. The rest of the weekend passed, and I continued to sleep in another room. She asked if she could join me, and I told her, "No, we need to be apart." I took Monday off again, unbeknownst to Jill. She went to work, and I had already started moving into a temporary motel to wait for news of the transfer. My regional boss was considering two options. Since I was the assistant manager of the store, and the manager himself also knew the situation, he was a good friend and understood that my transfer would bring me financial benefit and free me from the toxic environment in which I lived. Around lunchtime, I called Jill's office and spoke with Sally. I sensed that she was reluctant to talk to me, but I needed to know how Jill was feeling at work. Sally noticed that Jill was very quiet and reserved. She also noticed that Jill met with Robert in his office for about an hour. When she came out, she looked nervous and headed straight to her office. Sally said she looked into her office and saw Jill crying. Sally asked what happened, but Jill replied that she had had a rough weekend and that she and her husband were going through a difficult period. Being a friend, Sally asked if it had anything to do with Robert, and Jill nodded, but didn't go into detail. I asked if she and Robert had gone to lunch, and she couldn't tell because Robert had left about 10 minutes ago, and she had just left. I thanked Sally and decided to call Jill. He waited a few minutes to see if she was with him. Jill answered my call and asked if she was having lunch. She said yes, and I heard a noise in the background like people talking, so she really was at lunch. Then I asked the main question, "Are you alone?" She said she was just picking up lunch and would be back soon. I called Sally again and found out that Jill had only been gone for 25 minutes, so maybe she was telling the truth. Sally also said that she went into Robert's office one more time for about 30 minutes. I thanked her again and continued to carry the clothes to my temporary home. Around 5 o'clock, I decided to go home and wait for Jill to come back and tell me that I had moved. When she arrived, I told her, "Sit down, let's talk." I said that I had already moved out and that we needed to live separately to figure out what to do next. I asked, "Jill, what do you want?" She replied that she thought we should stay together and try to make things right. How? Maybe we'll spend a little time apart to figure out whether we want to continue the marriage or whether it's better to separate. She was shocked. "No, I don't want a divorce. I don't want to at all." I asked, "Jill, after our confrontation, did you talk to Robert?" She said she did, and that they were just trying to figure out how they could work together. Nothing more. She didn't want to lose me. "Please, Harris, don't do this until we spend time with family over Thanksgiving. This could help both of us." "Sorry, honey, I love Stephanie, and I think you still want Robert. Being second to my wife is too painful. We need to talk to Stephanie and let her know we're separated." "Okay, I have to go. See you later." I hugged her while she cried and left. I settled into a motel and continued going about my business. I told Jill that she could call me if she needed to discuss something, otherwise we needed to be apart. I slept terribly again. The holiday season started at work. As always, it was very busy, which was for the better. I finally finished work and returned to the room around 7 o'clock. I checked my phone and saw a message from Jill telling me she loved me. I thought sarcastically, "Jill, who loves?" Later, Jill called and I answered. She said Thanksgiving dinner would be at noon. She was excited because Stephanie was coming home tomorrow and we invited about 10 people. Then she asked what time I would arrive. I said I won't come. She fell silent and simply hung up. Well, it went great. After this conversation, I called Stephanie and told her that her mom and I had separated. She started crying, and I told her that her mom was dating someone. I didn't go into detail, but I had to tell her the truth. I didn't create this mess, her mom did. She begged me to come to Thanksgiving, but I said I couldn't. I was too injured and was planning on taking her out to dinner so I could see her as much as possible over the weekend. The work promised to be intense. It was Black Friday after all. I usually started work around 5 a.m. and worked until almost 8 p.m. She begged me to return to my mother because it would be terrible for her if we did not reconcile. I wish I could tell her more, but I didn't have the strength. Another night passed, and I again slept terribly. I hope I make it through this holiday season because it promises to be the worst I've ever had. The Wednesday before Thanksgiving was always crazy at the grocery store. We prepared hard for everything. I worked for about 12 hours and then went back to my little motel. Thanksgiving morning was sunny and bright, but I was depressed. Alone, hurt, and angry, I was in a room with a kitchen, and I bought some food to get through the day. I was looking forward to dinner with Stephanie, but the rest of the day was shaping up to be a very quiet one. I thought about all our past Thanksgivings and started crying. Life seemed to suck, but I needed to move on and start again. All day I had only the TV with me. I felt like I was in prison. At noon, as I ate my ham and cheese sandwich, I thought about those gathered around the big table. Later, Stephanie called and said she would come around 4 o'clock to spend time with me. I loved my girl so much. She was my rock. When she arrived, I hugged her tightly and kissed her, and we both started crying. I held her for a long time until she sat down. Stephanie said she spent half the night awake with her mom. Jill told her that she had made a big mistake, but did not go into detail. Stephanie asked, "Did she cheat?" And she simply said that she was wrong. I said I would tell her everything she wanted to know, except for the gross details. She understood. She said that my mother was in a complete breakdown, cried for 2 hours, and was afraid to meet everyone if I wasn't there. She also said that everyone was shocked when they found out that we separated. Mom did not want to answer questions, but said that she was working on reconciliation. Dinner was quiet, Stephanie reported, but Jill's mother was angry. She was going to get to the bottom of it, and I was expecting a call. Stephanie and I had a nice dinner talking about everything school. Boys, she had a nice guy I met who might be the one, she said. This made me happy and sad at the same time. She couldn't wait to finish her work. I told her that I had applied for a transfer, but did not ask her to inform my mother until the transfer was finalized. Then she realized that my mother and I would never reconcile because my mother would never move. I told her that only she and her mom are keeping me here. I lost her mother, and she is already building an independent life. Nobody kept me in Richmond. I told her that she would be the first to know if the transfer took place. Stephanie kissed me and left. On Black Friday, I was in the store from 5:30, and we opened at 7 o'clock. The day was crazy, full of problems. 2 employees did not show up for work, the computer froze, and there were many complaints about the lack of some goods. I felt like I was moving from one crisis to another, both in my personal and professional life. Finally, the day ended, and I couldn't even look at my phone the whole day. When I returned to my room, there were about 10 messages, 1 from Jill, 2 from Stephanie, 5 from Jill's mother, 1 from Beth, and 1 work message from the regional manager. I started with the manager. He had good news. The manager from Savannah was about to retire, and he thought I would be a great replacement if I was interested. I said I would be happy to discuss this with him. This opportunity will come only after the first day of the new year. I understood this and looked forward to the meeting. Then I talked to Stephanie. She said her boyfriend was coming into town on Saturday, and I said I'd like to take them both out for a late dinner if possible. She agreed, and we agreed to meet at 8 o'clock. Then I called Jill. She said she had a good Thanksgiving, but everyone was asking about me. I said that I hoped the day went well and that I missed good food. She said that the choice not to come was my decision. She was also angry that I told Stephanie that she had an affair, which she did not. In fact, I was her lover, and I was angry because of the mistake she made. I told her not to sugarcoat her bad behavior because I didn't create it. We chatted a bit about Steph and then hung up. Finally, I talked to my mother-in-law. She was always very kind to me, and I had nothing but respect for her. I was very worried before the call, but I called anyway. She wanted to know all the details without missing anything. She was a lovely Irish woman who could be quite passionate. I knew where Jill got that from. I told her that I had caught Jill with another person and that I was devastated to share my feelings. She listened to me and told me not to make hasty decisions, that she loved me and that she would contact me soon. Surprisingly, I used to have a very high libido, and since all this started, I haven't even thought about sex. I think I was humiliated, and it completely destroyed my self-esteem. At dinner with Stephanie and Mark, we were talking about the future, and he, right in front of her, asked me for the honor of taking her as his wife. She smiled, tears appeared in my eyes, and I agreed. Mark was a pleasant young man with a good future. They hadn't told anyone yet, but they were planning to do it publicly soon. Steph and Mark were also planning to tell Jill later that evening. I hugged them both and felt better. For the first time in a long time, I had good news, a possible new job and a new son-in-law. Work took up all my time, and this was for the best. There was no strength left to indulge in personal pain. I would go to work early, get home late, and mostly just be exhausted. Jill contacted me a little, but mostly left me alone. I had no idea what she was doing, but I was curious. She called and asked how I was doing, and I answered that I was swamped with work, as usual. She said her Christmas party is this weekend, and although she's not sure if she'll go, she feels like she should go. She said that she misses me, but thinks a lot and hopes that we will be together again. This is the first party I won't go to with you, she said. I replied, I know. She then said she was busy with Christmas shopping and preparations. Stephanie had a lot of beautiful things, and I offered to help pay for everything she needed, for which she thanked me. Then she said that she had to go and promised that we would call again. Interestingly, a few minutes later, her mother called me, and I spoke to her. She was pleasant but determined. "Harris, I love you, but I need to talk to you. I would prefer to do it in private, face to face," she said. I replied, "Okay, do you want to see me tomorrow night at 9 o'clock?" "No," she replied, "I want to see you now." I was horrified, but realized that the meeting was inevitable. "Okay, I'll be there soon." So I got into the car and headed to her house. It was 9:15. I pulled into the driveway and she opened the door and hugged me. I said, "I'm damn tired, but here I am." We sat in the living room and she said I needed to talk to Jill. I understood, but it was extremely bad timing because I was working overtime and had no free time at all. At that moment, the door swung open and Jill entered. I haven't seen her since before Thanksgiving. She looked good, maybe even a little thinner, but my heart still beat faster. And then I got angry. Jill's mother said, "Calm down, honey. It won't take long." Jill ran up, grabbed me around the waist, and hugged me tightly. She got straight to the point. "Honey, I know I hurt you deeply, but I want you to know that I am trying to regain your trust. I met a counselor, and she helped me see my problems. I want you to take me to my Christmas party. Please, I beg you, and I promise to be good. This is for my work. They like to see couples, and this can help me." "Jill, you know I'm working overtime right now, and it's really hard for me to get away. Wouldn't it be weird if you were seen there with me? I'm sure Robert will happily try to humiliate me again." "Robert is an asshole. I don't care about his feelings. I care about yours. Please, there will be dinner and dancing. You can leave after dinner, but promise me at least one dance, okay? Please." How the hell do I get into this? I thought. She told me the time and place, and I said I would let her know if I could come. Jill kissed me, and I said I had to go. Her mother kissed me and said, "Please give her another chance. She is lost without you." I said goodbye and left. The party was a week later on a Saturday night at a local Marriott hotel. Reception at 6 o'clock, dinner at 7 o'clock, and dancing from 8:30 to midnight. I checked my schedule. I might be able to be there between 6:30 and 8:30. Everything looked okay. I talked to my lawyer. He already had all the documents ready so that I could serve them whenever I wanted. I asked if he worked with a private investigator, and he gave me the number. I contacted Phil, a private investigator who my lawyer said was pretty darn good. I met with him, told him the whole story, and said that I had been invited to dinner and I wanted Jill to be watched for a few days. Although I still wanted to leave to appease my daughter and mother-in-law, I tried to give her one last chance. Jill sent me a message telling me she loved me and couldn't wait to see me in a tuxedo at dinner. I replied, "I haven't decided yet." A week passed and Phil called me. He said he followed her and watched who she dated. She once went to lunch with Robert, but they acted normally, without any hint of romance. He went to her house once, but only stayed there for about 10 minutes. She didn't seem to have any romantic encounters with him this week. He said he would keep an eye on her until Saturday afternoon. I thanked him and hung up. The only thing that infuriated me was that he even stopped by my house, even for a few minutes. He was a real bastard, and I was about to get my revenge. But I just needed to focus for a few more weeks, and then I'll leave. Jill sent me a message asking if I would pick her up. I said that I would most likely come straight from work and meet her there. I also messaged her asking if she had seen Robert outside of work. She replied no. Then I asked, "What will he say if I show up at the party?" She said he didn't care what they thought. I continued, "What did you two talk about when you were together?" She replied, "Only about work. Everything is business." "So you haven't seen him since I saw you?" I asked. She said it was over. On Friday evening at work, Phil texted me and asked me to call as soon as possible. I was busy, but after 30 minutes I found a minute and called him. He said that Jill was at Robert's house. She left work and drove there around 5:30. I saw the delivery guy bring the pizza at about 6:15. By then, it was already 8:30. I realized that this was the last nail in the lid. Even though I was going to leave anyway, This only made my decision easier. Now I could tell my daughter and mother-in-law that I tried. I told Phil to send photos if he has any. He said he would try. I needed to close the store by 10 o'clock, which usually took almost an hour. I was confused. Even if I had previously thought about giving her another chance, all my hopes had vanished. Around 11:15, Phil texted me. He sent some photos, but they weren't as informative as I had hoped. They were seen hugging, but no sex was observed. They seemed to be staying in the living room rather than the bedroom. I wondered if I should call. I decided to at least give my soon-to-be ex-wife a reason not to come to the party the next night. I dialed her number, but it went to voicemail. I left a message asking for a call back. A few minutes later, she called and asked if I was okay. I said that there was an urgent matter, and I would not be able to come to the party tomorrow evening. She sounded disappointed and said she had a new dress that she wanted to show me. Then I said, "I know you're with Robert. Tell him, go to hell," and hung up. I got back to my motel at 11 o'clock and got into bed. Phil wrote that Jill left immediately after I called. Saturday morning was bright and cold. I slept a little better than I expected. I called Stephanie and told her I wasn't going back to her mom because she was still dating Robert. Stephanie was upset because her mom claimed she hadn't seen him outside of work and would never see him again. Then I called my mother-in-law and said the same thing. She was furious and apologized for raising a woman of easy virtue. I told her I appreciated all her support over the years and said goodbye. When I checked the phone, it turned out that there were 5 calls and about 10 messages, all explaining that she was there, but nothing happened. They ordered pizza and chatted. Nothing happened. She repeated this over and over again. Finally, I sent her a message telling her that Robert had won and not to bother me anymore. I will send the divorce papers on Monday. At work, I continued as before, but at least I knew that my future was already planned out. I needed to call Sally again at Jill's work. I told her it was the last time and thanked her for all her help. I asked her not to tell Jill that I called. Asked about the party, Sally said Jill was quiet and mostly socialized with her friends, but did dance with a couple of guys and, yes, Robert once, although she didn't look happy. I asked, "Did she say anything about me?" Sally replied that, apparently, you were divorcing her, and she began to cry. I told her, "Thank you, all the best." On Christmas Day, Stephanie came to see me in the evening, and we had a quiet, cozy dinner at my motel. Obviously, we were both devastated, but I was so happy to see my baby again. She said that my mother was very unhappy and that she reprimanded her for her lifestyle and disrespect for me. Mom cried almost all night. I then told Stephanie that I had a transfer and that I would be leaving the area after the 1st of the month. She cried like a baby and said that Mom was absolutely wrong about everything. She really hoped that we would make peace again. Stephanie also said that her mom received divorce papers but simply put them aside and hasn't opened them since. I asked Jill, "Can't you just sign the damn papers and we can move on?" She said it hurt her to leave the house, but realized that it had to be this way. Time is ticking. It's been almost 2 years, and I'm happy in Savannah. My beautiful daughter is married, happy with Mark, and lives in Northern Virginia. She loves her job and hopes to start a family in a few years. My ex-wife Jill sold the house, and I received my half of the proceeds. At first, she tried to resist the divorce, but it was in vain. After we broke up, she never saw Robert again as he moved on to his next victim. The next one was also married, and Robert lost his job due to sexual harassment. Even Jill testified against him. Steph says that her mother sometimes goes on dates, but is not happy. Her unhappiness prevents her from going out, and she chooses to stay in her condominium. She tells Steph that she made a huge mistake and will never forgive herself for her actions. She says she still loves me, but knows I will never take her back. I refused to meet with her, and my lawyer settled all the formalities. I saw her at the wedding, but we tried to stay away from each other. She sent me a long letter of apology, as her consultant advised her to do. She wants to visit me, but she will wait until I invite her. I started dating someone here a little. It's nice, and I'm in no rush. But I've met some lovely ladies, and I'm happier than I've ever been since all this happened. Jill stopped calling after the last time she asked, "Is there anything I can do to get you back or to get you to forgive me?" I replied, "I don't think so." Jill. Here I sit and look out the window. It's the start of a new year, and I'm alone and depressed, and the weather matches my feelings. It's cold, windy, and there's snow on the ground. What happened to me? My name is Jill, and I have been married for over 24 years to my college sweetheart, Harris. I met Harris in my third year and was immediately attracted to him. He was funny, kind, more outgoing, and attractive. All my life I have been very quiet and reserved. My parents were strict and expected us to always do the right thing. My brother is 2 years younger than me, and he always seemed to break the rules. He constantly got into trouble or caused scandals at home. My father constantly tried to pacify him. My mother was kind, but she could be strong-willed because she was Irish and knew how to keep my father and us all in line. We grew up in a typical middle-class family. I was a quiet bookworm and usually followed others. I didn't like being the leader or the center of attention. I was told that I was beautiful and sweet. This may seem arrogant, but my mother drilled this into me since I was a child. Be kind and follow the rules. Like I said, my brother was the exact opposite of me. He was a good athlete, outgoing, and always doing something. Most of his problems were not serious, but it constantly led to conflicts with his parents, coming home late, chasing girls, being the class clown, and not caring about his studies. I didn't go on many dates because I was mostly shy. A few guys asked me out, and I said yes, but they were more like friends, and we never had sex, just kissing. It was exciting, but I always knew I had to stay focused if I wanted to go to college. I felt that I was still too young to get close to anyone. I had friends who dated guys and were close to them. They told me about their experiences. I usually laughed quietly and enjoyed their stories, but I was determined not to give myself to anyone until I truly fell in love. I graduated from the educational institution, entered the top 10 graduates of my class, and went to study at the university. Leaving was exciting, but I was very worried about this step. I was smart, but very naive. I had a good roommate my first year, and we became friends. She was reserved, but she had a boyfriend. I didn't like it when he came over because then I had to go to the library or something so they could be alone. My neighbor Sharon often tried to set me up with people or persuade me to go to parties. She helped me a lot, and sometimes I went with her. I was asked out on dates, so I knew I didn't look terrible, but because I was so shy and didn't let guys have sex with me, after the first few invitations, I barely got any more dates. I could always ask Sharon about guys, and she would tell me everything she knew. I was interested and wanted to meet someone special, but I never let myself relax until I met the perfect guy. She laughed and said, "Jill, there are no perfect guys. You need to date different ones to find the one." When my third year began, I was completely immersed in my studies. Sharon had a friend from high school whose roommate was a wonderful guy. She insisted that I meet him. I just shook my head and said, "Everyone you introduced to me was either a party animal or a nerd with no character. I'm an introvert. I need someone who will love me for who I am." She laughed and said, "Yeah, with two introverts at the table, it would be a quiet date." She finally convinced me to meet this guy. She said he was nice and that he had just broken up with his girlfriend. I agreed. The next weekend, I met my Harris. I liked him immediately. He seemed pleasant, kind, and easy to talk to. This was something new for me. I felt good with him. Harris was attractive and had an easygoing manner. He could talk to both the janitor and the dean, and everyone loved him. Harris and I started dating, and at first I was curious, but wanted to see where the romance would go. We started seeing each other on weekends and then during lunch breaks. As time passed, I looked forward to our meetings more and more. He had a wonderful sense of humor, and everyone found him charming and pleasant. Over time, I fell in love with him. I couldn't wait to meet. I knew he wanted to move on to more physical intimacy, but he also respected my boundaries and still wanted to be with me. Spring has come, and our college held a ring dance. It was the biggest dance of the year, and I was so happy when Harris invited me. I bought a new dress and was absolutely delighted. We had a great time at the dance, and I enjoyed the evening so much. After the dance, I went to his apartment and stayed there overnight. I didn't plan this, but his neighbor left for the weekend, and we were left alone. My mom always taught me that you shouldn't sleep with a guy before marriage. I laughed at this thought because my lover and the man of my dreams kissed me and told me how much they loved me. I felt so good and calm. In the morning, I decided to prepare breakfast for Harris. As is often the case with him and his neighbor, there was almost nothing in the refrigerator except cereal, oatmeal, and a couple of bagels. I thought, this will do. I cooked the oatmeal, and when everything was ready, he came into the kitchen. He came up behind me, hugged me, and told me he loved me. I felt so good. I've been waiting my whole life for someone to make me feel this way, and finally my man is here, and I love him so much. I had a summer internship with the city government, and Harris was working in construction. He made good money and was in great shape. We looked forward to the weekend. Sometimes he would come and stay with my family for a few days. I was always proud to show Harris to friends and family. Over time, I realized that everyone loves him and believes that he is the one for me. He protected me and was always there. We started our senior year, and then tragedy struck. My father died suddenly of a heart attack. We were all devastated, including my brother. Harris became our rock. He came to my home, and we worked together to organize the funeral. After the funeral, we returned to school, although I wanted to quit school, but he helped me cope with it. Harris and my mom talked, and they decided that I should finish the school year, and then after discussion, Harris proposed to me. I was so happy that I just cried because he was my love, and I knew he was my soulmate. After this tragedy, I finally had something to look forward to with hope. We returned to school. The year flew by, and I visited my mother often, missing many weekends to be with her. Sometimes Harris came, sometimes he didn't. As the school year progressed, I looked forward to graduation and my wedding. I already worked in the city government, as I was previously an intern. Harris was interviewing and trying to find a job in Richmond. He understood how much it meant to me to be with my mother. Although my mother was strong, I felt that her father's death affected her deeply. I simply could not leave my mother alone. She needed me. Harris had a degree in finance and was offered a job at a large retail store that had an opening. I was so happy for him. He was happy too, but as always, he put my feelings first and was willing to move to Richmond for me. We finally graduated from school in May, moved in at the beginning of June, got married at the end of June, and started working in July. What a whirlwind of events this summer has been. I was so happy, but very nervous about getting married and starting a new job at the same time. At first, Harris was away on training and working long hours, while I also attended training and was busy with work. Just 2 years later, I found out that I was expecting a child. We were excited and prepared. I had severe morning sickness, and Harris would get up with me, be there for me when I needed support. I know that many times I called, and he would miss work and come home to take care of me. My mother was also very helpful, and I needed her so much. My pregnancy was difficult, and after the 5th month, I had to leave my job due to complications. Our beautiful daughter was born a little premature. Her birth came as a surprise to us, but I had complications, and after the birth, the doctor said that I should not give birth again due to health problems. I was happy about the arrival of a new baby, but at the same time sad that we would no longer have children. At first I was in complete despair. I had postpartum depression, and our Stephanie suffered from colic for 4 months. Harris and I took turns keeping a night watch for her, as we were both sleep-deprived. Because I was breastfeeding, I often fell asleep and Harris had to wake me up. I don't know how he coped with the job, but he always remained calm. Sometimes he was also irritated due to lack of sleep, but we both loved our daughter so much. I left work for almost 5 years after Stephanie was born and returned when she started kindergarten. It was nice to be home with her, but Harris and I felt we needed to save extra money for her college and household expenses, so I went back to work. I miss Stephanie very much, but I soon got used to the new routine and everything went well between us. The city, like any organization, had its intrigues, but I usually stayed away. I worked in the compliance department and over time became very competent, rising to the position of assistant department manager. Mr. Tom Lambert was my boss, and he was wonderful. He demanded responsibility from everyone, but was always fair and kind to his employees. Over time, I received promotions and was soon appointed assistant department manager. Mr. Lambert prepared me well, and I always felt valued. He had worked for the city for over 30 years, and I knew he would retire soon. Everything was going well at home, but Stephanie was constantly busy. She was very independent, an excellent student, and mature for her age. She was more like her father. She was sociable. Her boyfriends were mostly friends, not lovers, and she clearly understood what was acceptable for her and what was not. We were so proud of her because she showed maturity even when it came to dating. Harris and I continued to be a good couple both in and out of bed, or so I thought. Harris wanted to try something more adventurous, but I always told him no, believing that our intimacy was quite comfortable, and I didn't think it was necessary to change anything after so many years of marriage. I've never been one for experimentation, although Harris said that after all these years we should be able to have sex the way we both want. I told him that I was happy with what we had. I know he was disappointed, but he was never angry. Looking back, I now regret that I didn't dare try something new with him. After all, he was my only lover, and I had to be ready to try whatever he liked. This seemed to be our biggest problem. I've always been uncomfortable showing public affection. Harris always loved to hug and cuddle, knowing that it could lead to intimacy. Stephanie's senior year in high school was a very stressful year. Harris, having been promoted to assistant manager at the store, continued to go to all of Stephanie's tennis matches, cheering her on and giving her advice. Unfortunately, Harris' father was diagnosed with cancer. He and his mom moved to Florida to retire, and we haven't seen much of them in the last 5 years. We usually visited them in the summer, and they came to us at Christmas. His father was given only 3 months to live. We were devastated. He loved his father so much and could always turn to him for advice, because his father never imposed himself. I also really loved Father Harris. His mother was also kind to me, but she did not have the same warm attitude as my father. I understood where Harris got his style from. His father died almost exactly at the time the doctor predicted, having lived 3.5 months after the diagnosis. It was a very aggressive cancer. His mother found herself in a difficult situation. Suddenly, Harris had to travel frequently to help with her finances, and he was less and less at home. I began to envy that there is so little of him now. As Stephanie prepared to graduate, I realized how much I would miss her, and I became depressed, realizing that the house would be empty, and with Harris constantly leaving, I would have to be alone. Harris felt pressure from me and his mom and started to get a little angry because we were both demanding his attention. With Stephanie gone, he also felt the loss of his daughter. Looking back, I realized that I was adding to his anxiety by constantly complaining and whining instead of supporting him. I wish I could have been more supportive. As I told my friends Sally and Beth, I felt like I might need something more in my life than just a job and taking care of the house. They said that they go out in the evenings with friends and invited me to join them. I thought about it and agreed. I discussed this with Harris, and he said it was good. I told him that if I went with them, I would leave work immediately and go straight to the restaurant, and I would have to cook dinner myself. He immediately agreed. I started going with a group of colleagues. Sally and Beth were my closest friends. They were married with children, and we had a lot in common. The girls could relax and say whatever they wanted. Although I was quite introverted, I always liked to communicate with different people, especially the more open ones. Most often we talked about children, office work, our husbands, or current events. However, depending on who was present, sometimes single women interacted with and shared their adventures. It was a revelation for me to listen to their stories. Harris was my only lover, and not having much dating experience, I was naive about sex, except what was between us. After a couple of years, Mr. Lambert retired and plans were made to hire a new manager. We all thought it would be someone from our city. A temporary manager was appointed to run the office for 6 months. We all assumed he would get a permanent position, but that never happened. We all remained in our places, and I continued to meet with colleagues. Some of them were quite open about their relationships. Beth, Sally, and I listened as they shared details of their sex lives. I know I was naive, but the stories about different lovers surprised me. I never talked about Harris or anything too personal, limiting myself to general topics. Sally and Beth confided in me about their personal problems, and I shared what was bothering me, but nothing too explicit. It was also interesting to listen to single women, although sometimes they seemed a little promiscuous. I must admit, I was looking forward to them starting to discuss their intimate adventures. They're big guys, but most of them were arrogant jerks. Not having much experience, I never thought about it. It gave me mixed feelings, strange, but interesting. I knew I would never cheat on Harris, and he would never cheat on me, but I loved hearing about a completely different world that I had no idea about. When Stephanie left for college and Harris returned home from traveling to help his mom, I was happy we were back together. Then another tragedy happened. His mother, like his father, was diagnosed with cancer. This was another blow for my husband. He had to travel back and forth frequently again to help her, and I also went along. We invited her to move in with us because we had a free room, but she did not want to leave her home and friends. The treatment initially went well, but it weakened her, and she found it difficult to recover from the procedures. And then, just as she was starting to recover, she developed pneumonia and an infection. She died very suddenly, and doctors said her heart probably failed as a result of the treatment. Harris fell into a deep depression, and I tried to be especially gentle with him. He had been through so much, and I was determined to love him, to help him forget a little about his loss and ease the pain. After my mother-in-law died, my job changed too. A new manager took my place. His name was Robert Haverford. This was the beginning of the end of my marriage. I just didn't realize it. Robert was introduced, and my first reaction was that he was attractive and had a very strong presence. I was worried that he would be overbearing and instill fear in us. Sally and Beth felt the same way. When we started working with him, he made an effort to get to know each of us and seemed pleasant but firm. Sometimes we noticed how he became arrogant and a little aggressive towards people. I have never met such a dominant man. He was tall, attractive, and quite a typical dominant male. I was excited, but also afraid of him. I decided to remain silent and just do my job. I don't know why, but I never told Harris about the new manager. I guess deep down I didn't want him to find out. He forgot to ask about this too. Every day when Robert came to work, he would come up to me and make comments about how I looked and how lucky my husband was, and my heart would start racing. I knew it was wrong, and I also knew that I would never do anything more than just talk to him. Then he asked me to go to lunch with him because he wanted to discuss confidential office matters without anyone overhearing. Since I was his deputy manager, I agreed how naive I was. At first, the lunches were work-related, but then they became more personal, about my family, whether I was happy, and what he could do to improve my situation. I heard from Sally and Beth that he was a real lover. He dated women, and there were rumors that he had impressive assets and knew how to use them. I, being quite conservative and not very experienced, was flattered when he said that he liked being with me. And when he added compliments and made sexual comments, I began to worry, blushed, and he liked to tease me. It was strange to me, but I never thought it would be a problem. Then it all happened at one of our women's evenings in a restaurant. As it turned out, he suddenly appeared. I don't know how he knew where we would be, but there he was. He joined us for dinner and then said there would be a dance across the street in the lounge. Some women didn't want to go, but for some crazy reason I liked being with him and agreed. Sally wasn't there that night and Beth said she had to leave. Only Robert, myself, and one other woman remained. Elizaveta, an employee of our department, also joined. When the music started, Robert asked me to dance, but I refused, and then he invited Elizabeth, and she went out on the dance floor with him. I watched them dance and realized that Robert was an excellent dancer. He was a large man, but he moved gracefully. They danced a few times and returned to the table. Then Robert asked another woman from across the room to dance, and she seemed to enjoy it too. Elizabeth, who was single and perhaps 10 years younger than me, hinted something about his size and giggled. Elizabeth was known for dating many men. After a while I had to leave, but Robert grabbed me and forced me to slow dance with him. I was amazed. When I returned home, Harris was working in his office. I was very excited. I kissed him and told him that I needed a shower. He nodded and winked. I was ashamed, but I dreamed of Robert. Then I got dressed and climbed into bed. I was so tired, but felt great. Soon I fell asleep. I didn't even notice when Harris went to bed. Thus began my fantasy of being with Robert, and every day he turned me on. He would take me out to lunch and touch me tenderly. I became more and more excited at the thought of him. He was never intrusive or rude, he was a gentleman, but he knew how to manipulate me, and I was ignorant of it. I started working longer and arriving later. I tried to dress more provocatively, but not too much, just enough for Robert to notice. He constantly gave me compliments, and I absorbed them. Looking back, I realized that all he wanted was to sleep with me. I just didn't see it then. Beth and Sally warned me to beware of him because he had a bad reputation, but I chalked it up to maybe them being jealous. I was stupid. I soon began to distance myself from Harris. I told him I was tired when, as it seemed to me, he wanted intimacy. I began to ignore his wishes. We used to have an active sex life, not fantastic, but quite satisfactory. I didn't even realize that I was becoming so grumpy and unconsciously began to quarrel. Harris kept saying he was worried about me. I replied that I was getting older and spending more time at work to pay for Stephanie's college expenses. He said he wanted to take me away for the weekend, and he was excited. I answered that this was impossible since work was too busy. I saw that he was in pain. He was always so caring and tried to please me. Things continued to progress, and I began to want to be with Robert more and more. I knew it was wrong, but I thought that once I slept with him, I could go back to Harris and no one would know. Unfortunately, the relationship with Robert became obvious, I just didn't notice it. Every year, Harris had to go to a conference with other managers to discuss the upcoming holiday season. I hated being alone and was always afraid when he left. However, this year, as Robert teased me and beckoned me more and more, I decided that now was the right time, since Harris would be out of town. I was so inspired that I started buying sexy lingerie for Robert and thought it would be a new adventure for me. I thought I was being discreet, but Harris saw the lingerie and asked when I bought it, because he had never seen me in such an outfit. I said that I had it for a long time and changed the subject. As I already mentioned, I have always been very conservative due to my upbringing and never did anything spontaneous. I laughed quietly to myself, preparing to do something no one would think of. Robert continued to seduce me, and eventually I agreed to tell him about the Harris conference. He was delighted and said that we would spend a lot of time together during the week. I was so excited that I became unbearable for Harris. He constantly said that he was worried about me and advised me to go to the doctor. I answered that this was normal because I was losing the desire for sex. I assured him that I would go soon. I didn't even realize that I had completely broken away from him. I didn't care because I was waiting for Robert. It's amazing how much I've changed, and I didn't even notice it. In the week before Harris left, all I could think about was my time with Robert. I practically threw Harris away. He became increasingly frustrated and angry. I ignored him except to complain about him. I usually accompanied him to the airport, hugged him, and told him that I would miss him, and was always there to meet him upon his return. But this time I said that I was busy and asked him to take a taxi. He just looked at me and walked away. When he left, I was delighted. I immediately called Robert and said that now I was alone for the next 5 days. Robert was delighted and wanted to come. I said no, but I thought it would be nice to go to dinner and talk. I was excited but also nervous. This was a huge step for me, and I needed his reassurance. We met at a restaurant and had dinner, and Robert sat next to me, not across from me. He touched me gently and hugged me. The restaurant was in another part of the city, and I didn't think anyone would recognize me there. We had a pleasant dinner, but I wasn't ready for more yet. Soon I dozed off, completely forgetting about my husband. When I woke up, I checked my phone. There were no calls from Harris, but there was one from Robert with a message that we were waiting for an amazing night together. This excited me, and I looked forward to the workday. Robert called while I was getting dressed and said he would pick me up. I didn't think about what it might look like and agreed. While I was waiting for Robert, I thought about Harris and knew that it would be strange for him if I didn't call, as I usually did. Then I heard a car approaching and ran out to get into it. The day flew by, and over lunch he said that we needed to discuss the problems of the city. He said he would let everyone know that we had one more city building to visit, and that we would be leaving around 3 o'clock and not coming back. When Robert walked into his office, Beth came up to me and asked what was going on. I simply said that Robert assigned me to solve a problem with a business related to codes. It was clear that she understood that this was not the case. I said that I need to go get ready. At 3 o'clock, Robert grabbed his coat and said it was time. He drove me to his house and parked in the garage. He led me inside. The house was cute, but not very stylish, and I thought, this guy could use a feminine touch to make it cozier. Once in the house, he said that I was his, and that I should do as he said. I simply nodded. We ordered Chinese food, and we hooked up again. He liked being dominant. I was his toy to play with. After that, I asked Robert to take me home. I needed to get home in time in case Harris or Stephanie called. When I got home, Robert kissed me and said he would pick me up again in the morning. I returned and immediately climbed into the bath. I was completely exhausted and trying to relax. I checked my cell phone and home phone. There were only 2 messages, one from Stephanie and one from her mother. I called Stephanie and we talked. She said I sounded tired, and I said I had had a rough week. Then I called my mom and we talked about Thanksgiving and Harris. She asked, "Do you miss him?" I answered, "Yes, but sometimes it's nice to be alone." She said she had never heard me talk like that, and then the guilt came flooding in. I really missed Harris and was surprised why he didn't call. I was concerned, but not enough to call myself. The next morning, when Robert drove up to the yard, I noticed that my neighbor was sitting on the veranda reading a newspaper. I hurried to the car and got into it, hoping that he wouldn't notice me. The day flew by unnoticed. Later, he said that he needed to meet with the mayor and that he would be back by 5 and we could leave. Sally came in and asked how everything was going. I said everything was fine, but she saw that I was distracted. She asked how Harris was doing, and I said he was gone for a week. Then she said something that scared me. "Jill, be very careful. You love your husband." I was horrified. Had she really guessed what was happening to Robert? I said I would be careful and went back to my office. At 5 o'clock, Robert returned to the office. He said he needed to clear his desk, and then we could leave. I agreed. A few minutes later, he came out, and we went to his house. In my entire life, I have never been like this. I felt like a slave, following all orders, but I understood that this was too much. I was losing control, and I didn't like it. Robert and I finished dinner, and he grabbed me and took me upstairs. Then, after enjoying the time with him, he took me home again. I walked into the house and cried because of everything I had done. I understood that I would not be able to meet with Harris because he would probably notice from my face what I had done. However, somehow I was drawn to it. I wasn't usually submissive, but with Robert it was different. The next day was Wednesday. I knew that Robert was waiting for a meeting after work, and I told him that I could not meet because I also had an appointment. I needed a break. I was completely exhausted after 2 nights in a row. I went to bed and slept well. It was Thursday, and I knew Robert was looking forward to spending the night at my house. He said it was so sexy to sleep in the bed with him in the bed I share with my husband. I was too naive to understand that this was exactly what Robert liked, to humiliate my husband and make me so submissive. Looking back over the past week, I realized that I hadn't heard anything from Harris. No calls, no messages. Then I panicked. He must have felt something too. I haven't called him all week either. Robert drove up and I went to work. The day passed and my thoughts were elsewhere. I was angry that I didn't tell Robert that I was going to work myself. I didn't want to be with him anymore because Harris was coming back tomorrow and I wanted to be in the best possible condition. At 5 o'clock we left. This time he wanted to take me to dinner. I reluctantly agreed and said that we could not do anything today as I needed to prepare the house for Harris's arrival. He continued to assure me that everything was fine, but I understood that he would still try to do something when he dropped me off. We spent a pleasant evening at dinner, but I was weary and very tired from all these adventures. We left the restaurant after 2 bottles of wine at about 8:30. When Robert arrived at the house, he got out of the car and came over to help me inside. I thought I saw someone watching from our neighbor's porch. Although there were no lights, I thought I caught a glimpse of him. He hugged me by the shoulders, and I, swaying a little from the wine, hugged him back. We got to the door and I said, "Thank you," but he said he at least wanted to help me in. I made the biggest mistake of my life and agreed. He came in and sat down next to me. The rest happened the same way as Harris said. Everything seemed to be in slow motion, and I had a real fear that Harris would kill both Robert and me. After all the fuss when Harris kicked Robert out, I took a shower and cried the whole time I was there. I could never explain or justify how badly I treated my beloved, dear husband. The following weeks blurred into one moment, and I only spoke to Robert when absolutely necessary. The last time I still treated my husband like a piece of trash was when I finally decided to go to Robert to explain to him that I didn't want him to bother me anymore. He kissed me, and I almost choked. We had dinner together again, and I told him that I loved my husband and had probably already lost him. Robert continued to act arrogant, but shortly before I left, I told him that he would deserve it if Harris released photos of him peeing on the floor in a panic. And then the phone rang and Harris said, "I hope you enjoy being with Robert." He knew I was at his place, as if I hadn't already ruined our marriage. The holidays were terrible, and when Stephanie told me her dad was moving to Savannah, I knew I would never get Harris back. I deserved all the bad things that happened to me. Eventually, Robert continued his temptations and finally lost his job. It was poetic justice. Unfortunately, I live in a one-room apartment, take care of my sick mother, and sometimes visit my daughter. My life is no longer alive, it simply exists. The love of my life was gone, and there was a huge void in my heart. I returned to my simple conservative life alone. I rarely date men and have almost no desire to do so. Now I just work and go home. I still dream about Harris and how to get him back. But it's no use because he's already moved on. I'm truly devastated. Next time I hear a woman who wants more, I'll tell her, make sure he's a selfish bastard. Subscribe to our channel so that your love doesn't cheat on you, and go ahead and listen to the next story because this story is nothing compared to the next one. If you're under 18, don't even think click to the next one.